Hey guys, Ryan here. Before we go any further, a word of warning to headphones users. The audio for this episode is a bit out of whack due to a new recording method we tried. In the future, we will try to amend the issue. That being said, on this week's episode, we interviewed top Kill Team players Alex and Emmanuel from Strategic Advantage, Glass Half Dead, and Virenid 40K to find out who they think will win the Command Point Invitational Grand Final. Alex the Kid Rutner-Eric and his Althway Asuryani will be taking on Matt Howell and his Novak Necrons on Monday, May 25th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. Tune in to twitch.tv/commandpoint to watch it all go down live. And without further ado, let's get to the interviews.
Okay, everybody, we are here right now with another pair of content creators. This is Alex and Emmanuel from Strategic Advantage here to talk to us today about the grand final matchup here between Matt and Alex Rutner-Eric. So, how's it going, guys?
Well,
Good.
yeah. I'm Emmanuel for anyone who doesn't recognize my voice. And the other
I'm Alex.
boy from the webway is Alex. Yeah.
Great. So, obviously we're coming up close on the finale of this tournament that's been going on for, I guess, just a little over almost a month and a half now. Maybe I haven't really been keeping exact track, but
Feels like the better part of this year.
Yeah, honestly.
Things are dragged out.
So I guess before we even get into the players and looking at who is actually in this situation here, it's Necrons versus Asuryani. So this is something that we saw. I mean, two factions that had pretty good performances on this packet at the actual LVO tournament. So it's not a huge surprise to see those two represented here in the final two.
Asuryani was at LVO? Really?
I didn't play 3 of my 7 games against them.
Yeah, I mean, so Alex, you actually have a lot of experience playing Asuryani on LVO. So, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like coming up against that so often at the actual tournament?
Well, it was sort of playing against Asuryani is sort of like this weird alternate dimension mirror match for me as an AdMech player, because the two factions really want to play very similarly. They both they're both quite happy shooting at you, but they both got some melee threats that can do some damage. Asuryani's probably leaning a little more heavy on the melee than I do, but I think this whole game that we're gonna see, this Eldar versus Necrons, is sort of again this bizarro world matchup of me versus Emmanuel,
Especially when you look at the lists, yeah.
Yeah, it's instead of Evil Sun's Orcs versus Metallica AdMech, it's Althway Eldar versus Novak Krons, which is, I mean, there's not really any difference, let's be honest, right? They're basically the same.
They both have a decent amount of numbers to play with, so you're not having one swinging in the super elite direction. You also have a unique situation here just with the list that Matt's bringing. He's very, very, very skewed in the melee side of things. For better or for worse, he's going to have to go up against some of the better shooting in this game. But having those reanimation protocols in his back pocket are going to help a lot with that approach.
Yeah, I mean, Alex has been in this matchup before with Necrons on this very packet, and he has a habit of rolling quite a few 6s on those reanimations. He's kind of notoriously frustrated with the whole thing of having to play against Necrons.
He's had to slog through all of the Necrons, is that right?
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
about.
I think this is kind of a thing, and just like a repeating thing throughout the kind of the history of competitive kill team. If you get into the later stages of a tournament, chances are you might have to beat a Necron to win the whole thing. And I think this kind of goes back to, I mean, you had Necron Chuck, what is it, 2 years ago, crushing with Necrons and making it to the top tables. So, I mean, 2 years later, they've kind of survived through any quote unquote meta or any kind of packet changes. They're still dominant. Yeah, I think it'd be a fair statement to say if you make it to the quote unquote finals of a GT or something like a major, then you've either probably had to play Necrons or your opponent has had to play Necrons to get there.
Yeah,
or
fair.
one of you are Necrons.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was like a good time to look at the actual rosters and I guess kind of see how they stack up against one another. So we're talking about Necrons right now, so we might as well look at Matt Howell's roster. I mean, Manuel, I know you got the chance to look at it and kind of pile over it. What are your thoughts?
Flayed ones are good, and Matt seems to agree with that. Just kind of picking his brain as far as how he would want to play this. He has two options for a leader on this list. He could either go with the Necron Warrior, which is either that or a Flayed one as leader. He didn't opt for a Lich Guard leader. He only ever will just take one Lich Guard, maybe, unless he wants to have a ton of Lich Guard specialists. He has one listed for each specialism, and then a bunch of Flayed ones and a bunch of Necron Warriors. Looking at this list, though, it seems like the kind of list I would build if I really just wanted to play melee, but ran out of specialisms to throw in the melee units I wanted to bring, so I threw in a bunch of warriors at the end. I haven't seen any of Matt's games, so I'm not sure if he actually brings those warriors to potentially hold a back point and take some pot shots. Rapid fire 1 at 24-inch range for a Necron warrior with AP -1 is not terrible. Not terrible at all, especially with how small kill team boards are. You're oftentimes going to be getting those 2 shots off. But the reality of it is just when you compare points-wise, 12 points for a Necron Warrior versus a Flayed one, also taking into consideration what a Flayed one gives you, which is all that immunity against getting shot back. It's hard for me to justify one over the other in my personal opinion. Do you know if he took? I didn't see their game, and I was looking for it in VODs, and I couldn't find it. But do you know if he took any of those warriors against Alex before in the previous match?
I think he's been taking a Flayed one leader, but every game that I've seen, he's had 2 of the Necron Warriors just in there.
Yeah, and then he brings 2 Lich Guard, 1 Combat, 1 Zealot.
Okay, and probably roughly 7 or 8 Flayed ones to round that out. Yeah, it's a very straightforward list, and it's very similar to the list that I built, except I really don't like shooting, honestly, so I had to just fill out every list that I build with as much melee as I can. Probably why I skewed my opinion on that a little bit. But I mean, the thing about Flayed ones, especially as what intrigued me the most about them in combat, is that even if you can't hide, if you can at least get that obscurity, you're only going out on a 5. That is an incredible shield to suffer that hill that you have to climb as a melee force. And that's why with the rerolling hits, rerolling wounds, it's just a really strong unit. Now the thing is, though, if you kind of do the math going up against a typical Austriani unit, which is going to be T3, a 4, or some of them have a 3 up, but a lot of them have a 4 up, some even worse, a 5 up. But if you average it out to a 4 up save, what you're going against, even the 1 wound models with Althway, you're probably going to need 2 Flayed ones to guarantee a kill on any of them. So you really need to use that momentum and kind of swarm, focusing on a side, probably how I would approach it, with a ton of that, and aside from having the Lich Guards, which can put out a little bit more damage. But no matter how good Flayed ones look on paper, when you do the math, it's actually surprising sometimes when you look at how much a single Flayed one can do. You oftentimes need a swarm and get a couple of them in there on an average unit, especially with Althway, to ensure that you can guarantee that unit's taken out of action.
Yeah, and I mean, Alex, he is running that Althway, and I guess this is kind of a good time to segue a little bit and talk about Alex's roster.
Mm-hmm.
He did make some adjustments from his run at LVO. Most importantly being he did take a Wraithguard this time around, and his game against Kingmaker, although he didn't run it against Matt, he did run it against Kingmaker's Necrons. So, I mean, how big of a role do you guys see that coming in?
I mean, it's going to be absolutely hilarious when it drops in and takes whatever it looks at to an injury roll. And if he's lucky enough to find a spot where he can maneuver it first turn to, split fire, if he can do that, he can be in a really good spot with it.
Or potentially even drop it in.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. Because how many models are we guessing that Matt's gonna bring in?
Probably somewhere from 11, 12, maybe 10, 11.
Yeah, I think that keeping it in reserve to drop in, with only the 8-inch range, if he goes first, it's easy enough to dance around, so it makes sense to keep it in reserve. And then Matt will either have to hold flayed ones back in order to screen it out, in which case flayed ones aren't in your face, so that's a win, or he sends them forward to go after the juicy Eldar and leaves his backline open for the Wraithguard to drop in and start harassing his back objectives.
Having at least the threat of a deep strike, I think, is going to be key. And they both have a really good potential for that deep strike, because flayed ones, I think they have a tactic as well, right? Can drop in a few of them. And Eldar, as we know, have plenty of tactics to let them do stuff. Those kind of shenanigans. And I think that threat's really that's going to be really key on Alex, is when to at least have the threat of a Wraithguard, simply because it's going to prevent a lot of assurance in ignoring that back line, and like you said, Alex, just making him forced to make decisions that he's not too happy with, leaving flayed ones back for a second wave that you can take advantage of.
I know I'm kind of jumping the gun here before we've fully hashed out Alex's list, but I really think this game's going to come down to Alex forcing Matt to have to make decisions, and put him between a rock and a hard place, because Matt's list does one thing. It runs forward and eviscerates you. But Eldar are tricky, and as long as he can force him into doing what he wants to do and kind of be adaptable, because whether he's fire and fading or feigned retreat to keep shooting and leave flayed ones high and dry, or keep the selective charges in with his melee units to try to eat up one or two Necrons at a time. He's got to play cagey in order to dance around the onrushing wave of Necrons.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. You have to use that kind of maneuverability and kind of exploit that one weakness the Necrons do have, that lack of mobility that they've got. I mean, I know for a fact that he doesn't enjoy playing that Wraithguard. He does not like it because it's not his play style. And I mean, I think it's been kind of a slow process, him kind of slowly bringing it into his arsenal. He didn't play it against Matt the first time, and that game did not go very well for him at all. I mean, part of it was he did roll quite a few sixes in that one round, but
yeah,
I think generally speaking, the Wraithguard turns that matchup from being on its head, kind of.
Because there's so much about the Wraithguard that it's so good there. I mean, it's a big beef unit, 3 wounds, that's nice, but that D-Scythe, auto-hitting. I think it's Assault. He can fall back and shoot because of the Wraithguard ability.
Even better than that.
Does it let you react when he falls back?
Yeah. You can shoot or react after.
Oh man! Ooh, that's gnarly.
And it's 1 damage.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at his list, and I think I might have mentioned this while we were chatting before we got onto audio. But God, if he had a Howling Banshee Exarch with Mirror Blades, it would have been so juicy in this matchup, because he just needs more 1 damage to prevent those 6s from showing up. And he's just got too much D3, and that's great for everyone except Necrons.
Well, the thing with D3 damage is that more often than not, in my experience at least, D3 damage is basically 1 damage anyway. So
the math nerd in me wants to tell you that you're wrong. The Philippine player in me knows that you are absolutely correct.
I mean, we're kind of nearing the end of this segment here, but we want to go through and make everybody that we talk to do predictions. So, and obviously there's a safe prediction and there's kind of a less safe prediction. But I guess I'll start with you, Emmanuel. Do you want to try and call it? Any particular?
I'm liking Necrons in this matchup. When I look at both of those rosters, I'm really liking Necrons, irrespective of players. Put same skill player, same perspective player on both sides. Because I played around with Alex's roster quite a bit, and I wasn't happy with anything that I put together to go up against what I thought Matt would bring. It cut into numbers quite a bit, trying to get that Wraithguard in there, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. But I really favor Necrons in just this matchup, comparing roster to roster.
You would, Orc Boy.
Orcs.
Okay, I guess moving on over to Alex. Do you differ in opinion from your?
I think game one, Alex takes it. I think the battlefield is hugely in his favor for the first game with that deployment, and with the round towers of the TTS map. I think that Matt's going to get lit up for a couple turns before he can do much of anything, and then at that point, Alex can move in. And do his mop up. But so he wins that, and then they go on and play the second match. And I think that with that the balanced map, I think that I would give a slight edge to Matt. So I think Matt takes it overall, but I think Alex wins the first game. There you go. There's my prediction.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, split decision almost.
Almost.
It's more like 2/3.
Yeah. and now both of them can be angry at me for saying that they'll lose.
All right, so next up for our esteemed panel of guests, we have Glass Half Dead. How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing fine. How are you guys?
Good.
I guess just to start, you've taken a look at both of the rosters now.
Yeah.
Is there anything, I guess starting with Alex's roster, is there anything that kind of sticks out to you that might be different or that might help it a little bit more?
I mean, so yeah, there is one thing that I find weird about his roster, but he's obviously already played it this way and it works for him. So he knows Azayani far better than I do. But the fact that he's using the Die Avenger Exarch with the dual Shuriken catapults as the leader absolutely boggles my mind. I assume that he's run the numbers and figured out that it works, and he's obviously gotten the entire way through the tournament using that, but I still find it very risque, especially since, as we all know, most people are tending to, take, the grot leader, leave it at the back, have it do absolutely nothing. Yeah, that's my main thoughts about his roster. Everything else is pretty standard Azayani tech. And I suppose the other thing is that I have played him once or twice. For those that don't know, I played him at LVO in the top 8, and I've played him 3 times, in your Command Point Invitational on TTS. One time I played him twice, and as I was helping him beat Necrons, I was playing Necrons, and he tried the Wraithguard out against me, and he's loving it against Necrons as far as I can tell, which makes sense, as that was the thing that beat me twice at the LBO top 8, so yeah, that works.
The way he runs his Exarch, it definitely is risque, as you say. He's just super aggressive with that model.
Yeah, so specifically with the matchup against Necrons, now I assume that Matt H is going to be running mainly flayed ones. He's only got 4 warriors on his list. Maybe he'll take 1 or 2, I guess. but I haven't seen him play. I don't know what he's typically running. But the thing about the Dire Avenger Exarch, when you're going up against Flayed Ones, for example, is you know he's hitting you on 5 with 4 shots. So you don't really want to charge him. So Alex can be super aggressive with it, and there's no way for Matt to really deal with it. I mean, apart from just charging it.
Yeah.
And that works for Alex, and equally, Matt is going to have exactly the same problem when it comes to his Flayed Ones and Lich Guard trying to get into combat with the Wraith Guard. So Alex has 2 very aggressive units there. Oh, obviously Alex is also going to take 2 Flamers, right? In the Dire Avengers.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah, so he has lots of board control. Yeah, he's got 4 units that are just locking the Necrons down and forcing at least a flesh wound, essentially.
Yeah, back on the Wraith Guard, it was kind of interesting because that was something that he didn't bring to LVO on his roster. And since, I guess, talking to Michael and kind of seeing it in action, he started practicing against you, and then he took it against Kingmaker, which was kind of a step for him because the first time he played Matt in this tournament, he didn't bring the Wraith Guard.
Right.
And that game, I mean, I'm sure that's not the only reason, but that game didn't go so well for him. And those little adjustments. I mean, the Wraith Guard is just such a big factor playing against Necrons.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you're looking at Matt's position, like as a Necron player, like how would you approach like even like handling that thing?
So if you want to actually handle it, as opposed to take a 50-50 shot that it doesn't kill you, which isn't really handling it, because then all Matt can do is charge it twice. Or, if Alex messes up his positioning, giving Matt the chance to charge something else and then consolidate in, then, it's shut down. It's not that scary in close combat, the Necrons. But if that doesn't happen, and he does have to just deal with something that Alex is no doubt going to put right in the middle of the board, yeah, you can't. You just have to run models at it to hope you lock it down and don't die on the 50-50 because it's only damage 1. I think bizarrely, the best way to handle it is to run the list that I ran against it the first time when I was playing against Mukti Holy against it, which was my all-warrior list. Unfortunately, I got kind of unlucky and didn't get the kill on it. I got a flesh wound on it, and of course it doesn't care about a flesh wound because it's also hitting. But, I mean, that's how a Necron deals with it. But, obviously, Matt doesn't have that option. He's only got Flayed Ones and Lich Guards, really.
So how do you think that the actual deployment that they're playing on is going to factor in? Like, do you think that it favors one side or another? I mean, it's obviously kind of like longer with the shooting lanes a little bit more exposed.
I think that any map involving Eldar favors the Eldar. To be honest, they're so fast. They don't care. They don't care where or how you're deploying. They can be anywhere on the field they want. Whereas obviously Necrons are very slow, which is a big negative for them. Luckily, this isn't the furthest apart deployment could be, but so what Matt is probably going to do is first turn is just going to be him hiding behind stuff, hoping he doesn't get kills. That's the turn that can really decide it potentially, depending on who goes first. If Alex goes second and is able to just get all the lines of sights, he can get lots of kills turn 1. And there's really nothing Matt can do about that. Obviously, vice versa. We all know how big turn 1 is, right? Who goes first? If Matt has to go first, and then Alex can just pip all those lines of sight, I really don't know what Matt will do, to be honest.
The kind of the classic melee versus ranged scenario, especially on this deployment, it can be pretty brutal for the melee team to not get basically everything they want in terms of order of operations.
Yeah, as I said, Matt's going to hug the 2 central pillars and just hope that he goes second so that he can't be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Another thing to consider also is that might work out in Alex's favor is the mission bonus on this map is getting a kill on an enemy that's within 2 inches of a deployment on your side.
Yeah.
And so you have Matt who's going to be kind of trying to march forward and get stuck in. That's something that could work into Alex's favor.
Yeah, so obviously, as he's the melee, he's got to hang back. He's got to charge forward, which means engaging on Alex's side of the board. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to, potentially, but nobody likes being in the centre of the board in the LVO map. So, I don't know Matt's gameplay style. He might throw a flayed one in there, just to see if he can hold more for the turn. But when you're going to go up against 2 Flamers, Dire Avenger, X-Arch, and D-Scythe, you're kind of screwed.
I mean, the real tricky part is obviously Alex is playing Eldar, which are just incredible on this pack, and he's getting better every time he plays, but how steep do you think the situation is where he basically has to win 2 games compared to Matt having to win 1?
That is a good question. So obviously Matt has already beaten him, right? Interestingly, Matt beat him, I believe, on the same map that I beat him on in the top 8. So obviously that's just not his map, and that map must heavily favour Necrons, I assume. Yeah, having to win 2 games. I mean, obviously it's an uphill climb. So just logically, I would have to assume he can beat Alex, right? Like 50-50, I would assume. Without seeing him, he's done it before. He can do it again, presumably. I always favour Eldar in every pack. As you mentioned, Eldar are strong in this pack. I have yet to see a pack they're not strong in. And Alex knows how to play them. It is daunting, and I like Alex the Kid, but I don't want Eldar to win. I mean, good luck to him, but I also hope he loses. Yeah. I'm not going to win.
We're asking all the guests here to, I guess, make like a formal prediction to try and call it, just to see, who maybe somebody gets it right, whether it's on a game by game basis or just the overall result. So
Necrons will win. There you go.
There you go. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, easy.
Is it going to be in the first game, or will Alex take it to the last game? What do you think?
Well, I do not know that. The reason I said Necrons are going to win is because otherwise Alex will have to win twice. And it seems, I'm just playing the odds on that one, sadly. If it was 1 versus 1, I'd say Aziani will win, definitely. But because he would have to win twice, I'm going to go Necrons.
Last, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this.
Thank you very much for having me on, guys. I really like that you put on this TTS Invitational. Perfect timing. Everybody's suddenly getting locked in. I think a lot of people have enjoyed having something to tune into. Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming on. And last but certainly not least, on our list of guests here, we have Biranid40K. Biranid, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah, we're doing great. I mean, we're looking at obviously we're in the LVO format, and we're looking at the grand finals of this long tournament we've been running. Basically, I mean, not to many people's surprise, but we're looking at Oscar Yanni versus Necrons. So,
gee, who would have thought? Wow. Shocker. And speaking of which, I'm looking at the roster right now. Shocker, number 2. Can you guys believe it that here on this Asuryani roster we see a Flamer both times, both possible to be able to be taken, and the fusion gun both able to be taken? Pretty much the same as every roster that's ever happened for every Asuryani player ever. Wow.
Yeah,
who would have thought, huh?
Well, there's one difference. There's one thing that Alex has different. He does run the beefy Dire Avenger X-Arc leader.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I hear that he's a pretty aggressive player. That's what I had heard at LVO.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting because I don't think that this matchup lends itself to that kind of a play style. Really, I do not. I think that if you're running in and trying to get melee, that's exactly what the Necrons want. I do see a Wraithblade on this roster, which is pretty interesting. Wraithblade Zealot. 45 points though.
He's probably leaning more towards the wraith guard with the D scythe, just because that weapon is the Necron killer.
Yeah. It's possible. I was actually wondering about, hey, if he does want to play into his aggressive playstyle, I guess maybe Wraith Blade might not be terrible. And one thing that I see is that he does have 3 of the heavy weapons platforms.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? You think that that's coming into play here in this matchup? I don't know if I would take one.
I think he's pretty attached to it. I don't think I've ever seen him not use it. Even if I wouldn't take it, I can't imagine that Alex won't.
I mean, it's not about 11 points. You do have the reserve shenanigans that could possibly come down turn 1, and that's kind of what I would be watching for if I was Mr. Hole, is that webway shenanigans, getting that strike off, because he's got to make it count in turn 1 and try to stay shooty, I think, in this matchup. I don't think you want to be in melee as T3 against Necrons souped up the way he has them.
Yeah, so I mean, you're pretty familiar with Matt as a player. How do you think that he is going to kind of stack up, playing Necrons, playing a melee heavy army against a super aggro Asuryani player like Alex?
Well, I think that I'm looking at the deployment, and I think that shooting is going to be an issue in the early game for that, but I think the Necrons can take that, with the reanimation stuff. So that Matt is all about the assault. So I'm looking at his roster, and he does have a couple ranged options, but I don't see that being taken. He has, let's see here, he has the warrior. I guess it's just the 4 warriors on here.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. If I was him, I would probably just do all flayed ones or all flayed ones with the Lich Guard and throw some T5 in there. What would be interesting is if we see a Wraith Blade kind of counter to that, and then the Lich Guard isn't there, so it becomes a huge waste of points for the Asuryani. It's a potential kind of a swing there. That a lot of this game is going to be done in the rostering phase. But looking at the map too, I think that this map favors Necrons, just because of the deployment zones, how far they're starting. So that's going to limit the amount of shooting that Eldar is going to get to do turn 1, before they get into lines, basically. So yeah, definitely. If I was to put money on this, I would put it on the Necrons.
Another thing, I'm not sure if you know this, but Alex, to win the tournament, he actually, since he's coming from loser's bracket, he has to beat Matt twice in a row.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's so cool that the tournament worked out in such a way that was possible. So, props to him either way. I think that he's already a winner for coming back from behind all the way to the front again. So that's amazing there. But yeah, so it's just another thing that's kind of leaning towards Necrons in this matchup, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, if he does lose to Matt, then it was Matt that took him to the loser's bracket, and it would be Matt that would hypothetically beat him here. So that would be the only opponent that he lost to at this tournament. And he went through quite a few tough matchups to even make it here.
Well, Matt's solid. He's won pods before and stuff, and I think that Necrons themselves are the superior choice for hold kill. I think that Eldar have a lot of play in the tricksiness and things like that, but the modification that they have on the dice, the fact that they're hard to kill themselves, they have numbers. I think that Necrons just have it. That they're kind of darlings of the format.
Another thing that I don't think I mentioned yet, but on this mission, the mission bonus in the LVO packet is it would actually kind of reward less aggressive playstyle from both players. It's if you get a kill against an enemy that's within 2 inches of one of your objectives, or I guess one of the objectives closer to your deployment zone, you get an extra point for that. So
yeah, that's interesting.
That could further realize less aggression from Alex.
True. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to see how that kind of plays into it. Bonuses are just weird like that. At least with that one, I'm not seeing a clear, advantage to one side. A lot of times with bonuses, it's like, oh, it's available to this guy, but not that guy, depending on the matchup. So at least that one doesn't seem one-sided, but it is interesting. Secondaries are going to be an interesting thing here, too. I think Vicious Assault for the Necrons, for sure. be a
Oh, yeah.
one to get off. Yeah, I just don't know about what Eldar would take here against them. A lot of the killy ones are not dependable because of reanimation. You know, wounding on 4s. They don't have a lot of high strength weapons. And then it's like, okay, if you take the striking scorpion and take somebody out with a mortal wound, for example, you get lucky on that 6. That's not on any of these.
For Alex, is pretty much every game he's ever played on this packet, he has always taken steadfast. It's not even a secret at this point. He always runs steadfast, and I think Matt's aware of that.
Yep. You know, if you can get out early, and that's what the Eldar have the ability to do, if you just get out early and you're covering multiple objectives, it's hard to take it from you. Steadfast, I think, is a lot stronger in Arena. Being on the open board, I do think that it's still an okay take, because the Necrons aren't going to have shooting. But it's going to be hard because he's going to come in with a lot of bodies. Like I said, if I was running this, if I was doing Necrons, I would just run pure flayed ones, and that's 12 bodies coming at you that are just murderers. And how many objectives are there going to be? I think 5. Take a couple bodies and point them at each one, just take it. So I don't know if that's a good play in this last round. I would think for Necrons you'd go Relic Hunters, maybe Vicious Assault. I'm trying to think of a third secondary here.
You could always do Cut Apart.
Yeah, there we go. That's the 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're all kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Matt's actually ran Steadfast a couple times in this tournament as well. I don't know if we're going to...
Yeah, I think he has.
What's important also is, I think every game I've seen Matt play, he's actually run 2 Necron Warriors in addition to a couple Lich Guards, and then just kind of filling out with flayed ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have yet
I
to
think
see it.
if he goes and dedicates anything to Shooty, I don't think that that's a winning move. I think versus the Eldar, you know, everything that's not in combat is an advantage for the Eldar. Eldar does not want to be in melee in this match, so you want to give as much chances as you can. Now with Steadfast, that's an interesting thing because that would cause him to hang back with somebody. I do see a case that some people could get like a Necron player could get Steadfast, for example, the Lich Guard. If you were to just be willing to throw away those points and put a Strength 5, 2 wound, I mean not Strength 5, Toughness 5, 2 wound model that's got reanimation protocols in the back, that would be an interesting thing, but I don't think he's going to do it in this match. I don't know. I think that I think it's going to be rough. Either way, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. I'm just looking at this roster. And like I said, knowing the history of the player, that he prefers aggressive play, I just don't know if that's going to work out here. Like, for example, he's got the one veteran on this list that's the Executioner, right? Or the Howling Banshee Exarch with Executioner. I don't know that you'd want to even use that, right? Because then you're exactly where he would want to be. You're spending 1 CP to get in there,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't have the CP that's required to do Decisive Strike. So even if you get that charge off, now you've got all these Necrons around you. You've given them somebody in melee, and he's got the 2 CP for Decisive Strike. It's a mess. This matchup is kind of a sweaty one for Eldar, I think.
He was really iffy about running a Wraith Guard to begin with. He's really only recently picked it up.
Yeah.
I think Michael convinced him at LVO, like they chatted about it. I mean, initially he didn't really like the Wraith Guard because it doesn't really fit his playstyle. Like it's slower, it's not as like in your face.
The points cost too was a turn off for him.
It's expensive, but I do think it might be a saving grace in this matchup being T6 with 3 wounds, 3 up save. That's nice. Now you're trying to deny kills. You're going against somebody who is very hard to kill, so if you're giving up somebody squishy and they get that kill, a single guy can be that kill 1 kill more. Now all of a sudden if you've got things like this around, it can kind of hedge that up a bit, but it is a big concentration of points, and it looks like he might be trying to go positional, you know, with that history of taking Steadfast and all that. It sounds like he might be a more positional kind of guy that gets in your face and tries to keep you clamped. And he's not really there for kills. He's there to keep you pinned, basically like a wrestling match or something, while he's scoring and the clock is running down. The rounds are going over and over and over to the end of the game. I just don't know if that's going to work in this one.
Despite this being kind of a matchup he's always struggled with, going back to LVO, he did have to beat other Necron player, Kingmaker, in the losers finals to even get here. And that was basically the first time I think we ever saw him take a Wraith Guard.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it worked out really well for him in that game. But, man.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
a Wraith Guard going into your DZ is an interesting thing, too, because, like we were talking about, you get him in there and you're starting to score points. Now he's hard to kill. That's a potential thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Yeah, and with the potential risk of the Wraith as well, Strength 10 is no joke.
Mm-hmm.
So having that Strength 5 Lich Guard might not be great in this match.
Oh, okay.
So few things that a Lich Guard has a counter, waiting right there, and Eldar could be one of them with that. So that's a thing to watch. Like I said, I would probably just do all flayed ones. Just get as many bodies as I could on the board and try to get in combat, because with the modification he has on dice, he's getting to an injury roll, and that's it. And I'm not seeing on the roster the same amounts that can be kind of leveraged on his side. And it's not, an issue to his credit as a player either. This is how Eldar plays. This is how Eldar wins. This is just going to be a rough matchup.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just like what helps you win the tournament against all these other factions isn't what's going to be right there for you in this matchup. If I had to go to Vegas right now and put some money on this, I would probably go with Hull.
Yeah. Well, that's how Vegas odds work. They love an undefeated.
Yep.
Yeah, you gotta
Exactly.
go with that Vegas favorite. Necrons is kind of something that's always been up there, like that top 4, like top table area, but it's never really quite won a big like GT or major.
Yeah.
And I think Matt too. He's kind of always been right near the top of those. Like he's always placing really well at the big tournaments that he goes to, but he hasn't quite gotten that first. So.
Yeah, he's done it with multiple factions too. That's
Yeah.
an interesting thing. He does it with Gene Stealer cults. He does it with the Heretic Astartes. Now he's got his Necrons going. I think that Necrons as a whole were really close to the front, and that was pure hold, and this is hold and kill. And we did see a top 8 at LVO. Glass got them there and beat Eldar to get there. He beat Mr. Holy. A lot of people feel to be the best the best Eldar player in the world to get into that top 8. So, it's just this is the format for them. What are you trying to do? You're trying to kill. You're trying to deny kills. They do both. You need to stand on an objective and survive. Okay, it's hard to find something that's harder to take out than a fresh Necron that's in intervening terrain. Obscuring terrain within 1 inch of it, who's only going out of action on a 5. You roll a 6, he comes back, the 5 takes him out, but a 1, 2, 3, 4 is just a flesh wound. It's just like, man, that's insane. And then you got, like I said, the modification on your own offensive dice is crazy. They're just OP, please nerf in this format.
I think that just about wraps it up. Thank you for coming on and doing this little pre-show with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Honored to have you ask me to come on. Privilege, so anytime, guys.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, hit that subscribe button and leave us a rating. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon on another episode of the Command Point Podcast.